A member of the ethnic Tutsi minority, Mr. Buyoya seized power twice and led Burundi for 13 years. 6 years after his first coup, he lost an election in 1993 to Ndadaye, who became the first democratically elected president in the history of Burundi, one of Africa's poorest and most densely populated countries. Pierre Buyoya, November 24, 1949 to December 17, 2020, was a Burundian army officer and politician who served 2 terms as President of Burundi in 1987 to 1993 and 1996 to 2003. He was the second longest-serving president in Burundian history. An ethnic Tutsi, Buyoya joined the sole legal party, UPRNA, and quickly rose through the ranks of the Burundian military. In 1987, he led a military coup d'état that overthrew his predecessor Jean-Baptiste Bagaza and enabled him to seize power. Leading an oppressive military junta, Hutu uprisings in 1988 led to the killings of an estimated 20,000 people. Buyoya then established a National Reconciliation Commission that created a new constitution in 1992 which allowed for a multi-party system and a non-ethnic government. Running as a candidate in the 1993 Burundian presidential election, he was defeated by Hutu candidate Melchior Ndadaye of the Frodebo opposition party. Ndadaye was assassinated during another attempted coup after only 3 months in office, leading to a series of retaliatory killings that culminated in the Burundian Civil War. During the war, Buyoya returned to power in another coup d'état in 1996. During his second presidency, he created an ethnically inclusive government by establishing a partnership with Frodebo. This led to the 2000 Arusha Accords which introduced ethnic power sharing. He selected Domitien Ndadaye, a Hutu as his vice president, who succeeded him as president in 2003. The war ended 2 years later. Following the end of the war, Buyoya became a senator for life under the terms of the 2004 constitution. During his post-presidency, he was also sent as an African Union envoy during peace missions in Chad and Mali. In November 2020, he was sentenced to life in prison in absentia by a Burundian court for his suspected role in the 1993 coup attempt that assassinated Ndadaye. He died of COVID-19 2 months later. Pierre Buyoya was born in Rutavua, Bururi Province, on November 24, 1949 in Belgian-administered Rwanda-Urundi. His father, Rurikumunwe, was ethnically a Tutsi Hima of the Batyaba clan. He received a primary education at a Catholic mission in Rutavua from 1958 to 1963. He thereafter attended the École Moyenne Pédagogique until 1967. He enlisted as an officer the Burundian Army and studied at the Royal Military Academy in Brussels, Belgium, rising to the rank of major. Academically, Buyoya studied social sciences, examined armored cavalry, and defended a thesis concerning the Algerian National Liberation Front. Once done with his studies in Belgium, he attended the General Staff College in France from August 1976 to January 1977 and the Bundeswehr Command and Staff College in West Germany from 1980 to 1982. Buyoya married Sophie Enterika in 1978, and the couple had 4 children. He entered the long-term single party, Union for National Progress, Union pour le Progrès National, UPRNA, and acquired a position on its Central Committee, Comité Central, in 1979. He renewed his party membership in 1984. Buyoya joined the General Staff of the Army in 1982 and was made responsible for training. His rapid rise through the military hierarchy earned him the nickname Old Man, and he was well respected by his fellow soldiers. The New York Times reported in 1996 that no one could recall his ever telling a joke. He is often seen at soccer games and reads a lot. He eschews a uniform, though his leisure suits recall French summer khakis. In September 1987, Buyoya led a military coup d'état against the regime of Jean-Baptiste Bagaza, who had taken power in another coup in November 1976. He led the country as the chairman of a 31-person military committee of national safety. He proclaimed an agenda of economic liberalization. As in previous regimes, he presided over an oppressive ruling junta consisting primarily of Tutsi. This led to a Hutu uprising in August 1988, which caused approximately 20,000 deaths. After these killings, Buyoya appointed a Commission of National Reconciliation, Commission pour la Réconciliation Nationale. On September 9 he was officially proclaimed President of Burundi. In early October he appointed a mixed government of both civilian and military figures and awarded himself the post of Minister of National Defense. This commission created a new constitution that Buyoya approved in 1992. This constitution called for a non-ethnic government with a president and a parliament. Democratic elections were held in June 1993 and were won by the Hutu Melchior Ndadaye, who created a balanced Hutu and Tutsi government. Nevertheless, the army assassinated Ndadaye in a coup attempt in October 1993. Some human rights groups suspected Buyoya of supporting the putschists, while several soldiers who participated accused him of helping plan the coup. Burundi entered a prolonged period of civil war in which 300,000 people were killed and 470,000 displaced. There were numerous attempts to form a government, but even the coalition government under Sylvestre Ntibantunganya was unable to stop the fighting. On July 25, 1996, with strong support and backup from the army, Buyoya returned to power in a military coup, ousting interim President Ntibantunganya who had been contested by the population due to his failure to stop killings perpetrated by rebels. The civil war became less intense but continued. Economic sanctions were also imposed by the international community because of the nature of Buyoya's return to power, but were eased as Buyoya created an ethnically inclusive government. He entered a new partnership with the National Assembly in June 1998 which was dominated by the Hutu-backed Front for Democracy in Burundi, Front pour la Démocratie au Burundi, FRODEBU. This paved the way for the Arusha Accords in 2000 which introduced a form of ethnic power sharing and paved the way for the end of the civil war. Buyoya selected as his vice president Domitien Ndadaye, a Hutu. The conditions of the Arusha Accords required Buyoya to hand over power in 2003, which he did. Ndadaye became the president of Burundi on April 30, paving the way for the end of the civil war in 2005. In the aftermath of the civil war, Buyoya became a senator for life as a former head of state, per the terms of the 2004 constitution. In his 2007 book From Bloodshed to Hope in Burundi, the former U.S. Ambassador Robert Kruger accuses Buyoya of orchestrating the 1993 putsch that led to the murder of President Ndadaye. Buyoya was appointed by the African Union to lead a peace mission in Chad in 2008. He was subsequently appointed to another mission in Mali. On October 19, 2020 the Supreme Court of Burundi sentenced Buyoya in absentia to life in prison for the murder of Ndadaye in 1993. In December 2020 he contracted COVID-19 in Mali during the COVID-19 pandemic in Mali. At first, he was hospitalized in Bamako but was later transferred to France and died on December 17 in Bonneuil-en France, in an ambulance on his way to a hospital in Paris. He was buried in Bamako on December 29, 2020. Buyoya, an ethnic Tutsi, came from a modest background, making his start in the military before rising to power in a coup in 1987. During his first term, he worked towards a more democratic system in one of Africa's smallest nations. He stepped down in 1993 in the country's first democratic elections in which he was resoundingly beaten by Melchior Ndadaye, a Hutu. But hardline ethnic Tutsi soldiers killed Ndadaye just 4 months into his term. His murder plunged Burundi into years of civil war between the majority Hutus and minority Tutsis. Buyoya became president again after a coup, ruling from 1996 to 2003. In 2000, he signed the Arusha Accords, an agreement aimed at ending the civil war which left an estimated 300,000 people dead between 1993 and 2006. He stepped down in 2003 in line with the accords. Another Burundian former president, Pierre Nkurunziza, died in June aged 55 of what the government said was heart failure, but speculation was rife that he had contracted coronavirus. At the time, a medical source told AFP that Nkurunziza had suffered respiratory distress before dying. Unlike its neighbors, Burundi had taken few measures to stop the spread of coronavirus under Nkurunziza, who claimed God had spared the country from its ravages. His successor, President Evariste Ndayishimiye, quickly declared COVID-19 the country's biggest enemy. But the deeply isolated country has only officially reported a single COVID-19 death since the start of the pandemic. In 1996, Mr. Buyoya returned to power with backing from the army, prompting economic sanctions from the international community. He stepped down in 2003 and later served as a diplomat for the African Union in Chad and Mali. Mr. Buyoya was born in 1949 and grew up in the town of Rutavu. He graduated from the Royal Military Academy in Brussels and served as an army major before taking power in the 1987 coup, which ended the 11-year rule of President Jean-Baptiste Bagaza. Buyoya, a member of the Tutsi minority that held power in Burundi for decades after the country's 1962 independence from Belgium, was president for 13 years in total during two stints, from 1987 to 1993 and from 1996 to 2003. From 2012, Buyoya served as the African Union's envoy for Mali and the Sahel region. He resigned last month after his conviction in absentia at home. Buyoya first took power in 1987, ousting President Jean-Baptiste Bagaza in a military coup. In June 1993, Buyoya left office after losing Burundi's first free election, to Melchior Ndadaye, a member of the Hutu majority. Just 3 months after Ndadaye took office, soldiers from the still Tutsi-dominated military captured and killed the new president. His death unleashed a conflict in which both the Tutsi-led army and mainly Hutu rebels were accused of atrocities against civilians. In October, Burundi's Supreme Court convicted Buyoya in absentia of Ndadaye's murder, sentencing him to life in jail. Buyoya called the conviction politically motivated. RFI said that at the time of his death he planned to return to Burundi to clear his name. 3 years after the killing of Ndadaye, Buyoya returned to power in a second military coup. He stepped down in 2003, replaced by his vice president, Domitien Ndayizeye, a Hutu, as part of an agreement that helped end the conflict. Thank you for watching this video.